Hey, it's Suffering Student here, and today we're going to have a basic introduction to JSON, which is a object notation based on JavaScript, and it's also a standard text-based format for representing structured data based on, as mentioned, JavaScript object syntax. So what we're going to do is I have created a very simple object, or first a class inside Java, where we have some attributes, and I have then created this object, and we're then going to transform this manually into JSON. So what is JSON? Or how do we write JSON? So firstly, we have some very basic components we should know of. We have an object, which is inside curly brackets, and we have arrays, which are inside square brackets. And when we start an object, so let's just create our object. So we have our user, we create an object. So because of JavaScript, we don't really define our objects with the name in the same way. We just tell it it's an object. We then first have the name value. So we would go name, colon, and then we would have a value. In this case, it's the name and it's a string. So we would use quotation marks. Showcase it's a string, and let's check what I gave the name. I just gave the name Hans. We're then going to use a comma to showcase this like the end of the line. And right now we get an error because right now this is the last attribute inside our object, and then we don't need a comma, not need a comma, but because we're going to continue adding attributes, it's fine. So let's have a look at the next one. The next one is age, and it is an integer. But we don't define like integer or double or whatever. So I will just simply go age. And the age is defined here to be 25. So just do it without the quotation marks. Then we have our friends, which is a string array. So I would go friends. And we have Jack and Eva. So friends is an array. We put it on the next line, and inside the array we can put whatever we want. And in this case, because they are both strings, I'm just simply gonna add them. Otherwise we could add like attributes as well, or even objects inside our arrays. We had an array of objects. As you can see, it can get quite complex quite fast. So let's just first add Jack, and then as well Eva. And as you can see, then we have finished our array. Let's see if we have any more values. We then have nationality, which I can't be bothered to write because I'm definitely just going to get it wrong. So I'm just going to copy, add a comma, adding something more, nationality. And in this case, that's a string. So we're just going to go German. And then we had our last attribute. I think we had married, which is a true or false. It's a boolean, which we can also use in JSON. So we have like our strings, we have our numbers, we have our array lists. We now have a boolean, which in this case is false, but it could also have been true if I could spell. There we go. But it is false. And because this is the last attribute inside our object, we're not going to add any more commas. So now we have created our first object inside JSON. Maybe we would like to have an array of objects. So maybe, let's say we had a database or some kind of information where we were sending all the users regarding something. We might have an array where our Hans would just be the first person in an array, and then we would add a comma and another object. And because I'm lazy, I'm just gonna copy and paste all of the information. Let's go Hansi. Let's say 20. Got the same friends, also German, but this guy is married. So now our JSON document contains an array of two objects with some attributes of name, age, friends, as an array as well, nationality, and married. So this is more or less all we need. There's one more thing we can use in JSON, we can also use null values. So let's say it's not defined rather than they're married. We just use null. Or something else might not define. But what's actually quite important regarding JSON, when we're using JSON, for example, together with Java, is we actually need to define inside our code, when we're reading our JSON, how we're reading it, because it's defined as objects, but it's not specifically defined as what they are. Like, for example, in Java, we would need to define what a 25 is, but we can get this as a string, and so on. But this was just a very simple walkthrough of how I would create manually. Probably wouldn't do it manually most of the times, but just to demonstrate the different components of our JSON document. So, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I wish you all a wonderful day.